Hey YouTube, today we're inside the door of a 2005, and this applies all the way up to 2008 with no changes, and then all the way to 2012 with a few changes. It's an Avalon, Toyota Avalon. This one's a 2005, and the door skin comes off just like every other Toyota. There's a cap here that pops out, and there's a Phillips screw here. You very carefully take out the window switch and door control. This pops out of here with a clip here and a clip here. There's another Phillips screw. They trick you a little bit. There's a rubber kind of door stopper type gizmo here with a Phillips screw, and then you just reach underneath the bottom and it all snaps out. Of course, there's on the inside of the rear view mirror there's a plastic cover, triangular plastic cover that pops off, and then you simply lift. This is a hook here that sits down inside the door frame. You see that, how it's kind of a lip there, so it lifts out. So a couple things to be careful for. Of course, the window switch will be taken off. I find it easy to poke at the little hook inside here to get these out, and plastic pry tools are your friend. Once you get in here, you are going to want to unclip this light down at the bottom. That's the light that lights up down by your feet, and the cables for your door handle and lock, of course, will come off. Now, this is the door regulator. Those are all like data, and that is a negative, that's a positive. So what I very simply did here was ran a test light on this, put the switch back on, ran a test light on this to make sure that it is even getting power. So with the test light wedged in there and your little ground clip on ground, doesn't have to be the ground in the plug, it could be any ground on the car actually, just hit the power lock button. And the fact that it lights up tells us that the regulator is getting power, it's just not doing its job. And it is, again, very common on the 05 Avalon especially, and also the 6, the 7, the 8, the 9, all the way up till hopefully it stopped in 2013, but they used an inferior quality motor, those little motors that look like a double D shaft, you know, like they're circular, flat on the top, flat on the bottom. You see them in kids' electric cars and stuff. That's what's inside the door lock regulator. So we're going to take this out. Shouldn't be too bad. There is a couple of star screws, torque screws here. There is a little rubber grommet that pops off from right there, pops out. There's another torque screw inside there with a convenient plastic device to hold it from falling out when it's unscrewed from the door lock itself. There's the hole for it, right? So this guy slides out and comes out of the actuator just with that simple screw, and again, your plastic pry tool to get this out. The plastic might pop off, mine did, hopefully you don't break it, but this guy just slides right out. The other thing is, obviously, this is part of the assembly. What I meant before is if it's connected, and it's not. This is the door handle assembly on the door, and then there's this rod inside here that it has a ball end. It pops in. You see that yellow over there? That yellow thing, there is a clip. So that's the part that curves down. It almost looks like the letter S. It pops, it rotates down. There's the hole there that the bald end of the gold rod there pops into. It pivots on the gold rod and clips around it so it can't pop off. So you just pop off that clip right there. It rotates clockwise up, and then you got to firmly pop the gold rod out of that hole. So with that, the actuator assembly should slide right out. Actually, there's this 10mm bolt here. I assume it's 6 on this side. 10mm bolt. Take this out, and the track for the window. This part here is up in a slot, and then that is the where that bolt goes. And with that, you should be able to pull it out. Okay, so this is the door lock actuator, and here's a little trick that helps me. There's many of these little clips. They're pretty common in electronic devices where they like snap over another one to hold this shut. There's a whole bunch of little Phillips screws you got to take out. There's a rubber it should be pretty obvious, a rubber like boot thing here that comes off the corner. But the gist of it is you need like 40 hands to get this thing apart. So what I do is I just take toothpicks, break them in half, open each one of these individually with my nail and push a toothpick into it. So once they're all open, it should slide apart. So that was absolutely brutal. I made the mistake of not opening this door. You probably hear it flips open, you take the cables off. I left the cables on. This might happen to you even if you take the cables off, but the gist of it is that all the levers and gears and springs, they're just sandwiched between the top and the bottom here. And when I opened it, they all essentially just sprung in different directions. And it took me a while. If it wasn't a slow day, I probably would have just ordered another one of these and, you know, written it off as a learning experience, because it took me probably 45 minutes or so. Very uncomfortable process of putting this back together. So sorry I couldn't show you inside of it, but hopefully this video is still helpful to get to the point where you've got this out. If you're the type that can, you know, fix an iPhone or take apart a remote control car and put it back together, you could probably handle this, and you're going to save yourself I mean, at least $50. The other thing is the motor that I got had a replacement. It fit in here exactly perfectly, but the shaft on it was about this long. The shaft in here was this long. So I took apart and cleaned the motor that was inside of this, and it works fine. I tested it by putting 12 volts to it. If you remember that little wire hanging down in the bottom of the door there for that light, I used that to grab power and test it. It's a good strong motor now that it's that the brushes have been cleaned. So it is back together. The big thing here is test this. Put it on the door latch. I'll show you what I mean. Put it on this latch and make sure that it latches, and then make sure when you pull the cable that it unlatches, because if you were to, you know, put this thing back together in a way where it can latch but not unlatch, I don't even know where to start. I don't know how you'd get the door open. I mean, if, you know, this thing is screwed into the door with 3 6mm screws and it's latched, I mean, the only way to solve that issue would be to take it apart, and you can't with the door closed. So you would be in quite a pickle. I mean, especially with the door skin on. Wow, you'd probably destroy the door skin, have to get in there with pry bars and everything and just break this into pieces. But it is metal, so you might have a really big problem on your hands. Probably, in the end, you'd probably have to cut the door open on the outside and replace the door. So make sure this gizmo works before you put it back in, okay? One more final note. Obviously, assembly is the opposite of disassembly, but to get this hook, there's you probably saw it in another part of the video, there's like an edge here, and the door like hooks into it, the door skin. If you roll down the window, it is a lot easier to put on. So hopefully this video is helpful. If it is, like, subscribe. You can always reach out in the comments on any of these cars. If I still have them and there's something I can show you, I'd be glad to make a video, okay? Thanks.